For materials, you will need your backpack, needles. I use sewing needles instead of embroidery needles and it worked just fine, and embroidery floss. Once you've got your materials, you can sketch the design mock-up. I did it on my iPad, but I initially planned out the color scheme on paper. Then, draw your design onto your backpack. You don't have to be too specific. General shapes are fine and don't worry about the pen. It'll be covered up once everything's done. Now we're finally moving on to the embroidery. Pull through one end of the floss by making a loop and tying it off like so. Poke the other end of the thread through the needle and hold onto it throughout the process. For stitches, I'm always coming up from the underside of the fabric. We'll be making a rose and the first stitch we're learning is called the woven wheel. To start, you want to make a 5-point star shape. It may help if you've drawn a circle split into 5 parts, as you can see on the right side. I'm poking my needle out from the perimeter of the circle towards the point in the center. Then I'm poking my needle really close to the center and pulling it up. To do the woven wheel, I will skip over one stitch and slide my needle under the next one. Again, I'm skipping the stitch next to it and going under the next one. It's pretty easy once you get the hang of it because you just go under every other stitch and pull up. Repeat this until you're satisfied with how full your rose is. To end the stitch, poke the needle down and out so you're looking at the back side of the fabric. I'm going to find a random stitch I made and slide the needle under it. As you see how it forms a loop, we're going to end the stitch the same way we tied a knot. I do this at least 2 times to ensure it's knotted and secure. I will be showing this later on in the video, but after I'm done with the stitch, this is exactly how I end it. Okay, cool. Now let's practice that again. A 5-point star. Poke it up close to the center and go under every other stitch. Nice. Now for the general flower shape, we got the lazy daisy. I'm poking up my needle and inserting it right next to it to form a loop. I'm going to hold onto the loop and have my needle come up again right at the edge of how big I want this loop to be. You can tell that this is also where I've drawn my petal, so you can use that as an indicator for where to come up. Then I'm inserting my needle on the other side of the loop so it traps it there. And repeating this for all of the petals that I have left. For the embroidery floss, I separated, I think, 2 strands out of the total, which is why she's looking a little thin here. You can do this to change how thick or thin you want your stitch to look. It ultimately turned out kind of wonky because I wanted the petal to look more circular. So if you don't hold onto the petals, it would probably turn out more pointy, but definitely a lot more even and less wonky. But yeah, that's the lazy daisy. So the main reason why I decided to do this video is because during the time of filming, which was months ago, I was looking up tutorials on how to embroider your KANKEN bag, or just any backpack in general. And all the videos were just sped up processes, but not tutorials. And honestly, some of them were hard to see with what's going on. So I figured it's time to change things around here. Moving on to this stem leaf pattern, I'm going to use the back stitch. Based on how long I've drawn this line, I separated it into 3 parts. For the first stitch, I'm going to follow the line. Then for part 2, I'm actually going to move a little further up where I've drawn it and poke my needle up from there. I guess it's called back stitch because you go back to where you started. Yeah. Once that's done, we're going to do our lazy daisy again to form the leaves on the stem. So same idea as before. You have the loop, then you poke the needle inside the loop, and then poke the needle outside of the loop. Repeat for however many leaves you want on it. There's 7 stitches that we'll be learning today, and we've already covered 3. Woo! Anyways, I'm doing this on a specific design I've made, but you can apply these stitches to any. Oh yikes, I don't know what happened to the footage of the koala head, but I used a satin stitch, which we'll go over later. However, right now we're going to use the French knot for its eyes and nose. Here I'm going to wrap the thread a couple of times around the needle and push it back in. The whole time, make sure to hold onto the thread with your other hand, otherwise it won't form a knot. The amount of times that you wrap the thread will affect how big the knot is. You can see I'm making its eyes and I've only wrapped it once instead of, I went kind of crazy with the nose, but yeah, you can see that it's a lot smaller than the nose because I wrapped it once. Anyways, heads up, I ended up coloring the eyes and nose with a black pen because I wasn't happy with how light this gray was. Okay, cool. Going back into the green, we'll be using the fishbone stitch to embroider some pointy leaves. I'm making a plain old straight stitch. Then I'm coming up right next to it and a little downer and actually crossing over it slightly. When you're doing this, have it be as close to the original stitch as possible for it to look natural. This is a little short, but we'll go over it again later. So here, using the French knot and the yellow color, I'm going to add a center to the flowers that we made before. I think this might be my favorite because you can go kind of crazy wrapping it around. Either this stitch or the woven wheel, because you can also go crazy just wrapping it. And speaking of which, we are doing the woven wheel again. Now that I'm doing a voiceover watching this, I Definitely should have edited so it's less repetitive and stuff, but I don't know, it's kind of satisfying to look at, just it going around and around and around until it forms, like, magically a rose. It's pretty cool, I think. Pretty cool. Also, I edited this in 2 parts. So one part I did in the summer, and I'm back editing it now. So there's definitely some inconsistencies between the first quarter of the video and the rest. So this part, it's going to be a 2-tone rose. I'm just drawing a smaller circle inside and using a 3-point star instead of 5. The technique is ultimately still the same, where you go under every other stitch. I think if you wanted to make an even bigger rose, you can go up to 7 stitches. I don't know, like theoretically makes sense, right? But maybe it just has to be an odd number. Can you believe that we've already covered 6 out of the 7 stitches? I already said that my favorite stitches would probably be the woven wheel and the French knot. So comment down below what your favorite stitch is that you've learned so far, or if you'll be using any of these stitches in your future projects. Maybe you're just here to vibe and watch a video. Let me know in the comments below as well. I'm going back in with a fishbone stitch to create some leaves for these roses. It's just a straight stitch and then another diagonal stitch right next to it. I think it's a lot clearer with this large leaf I'm doing right now, so if you didn't get it before with the previous footage, hopefully this helps. So when you're crossing over the stitch, you try to go a little further down lengthwise so it forms this leaf pattern. For the next stitch, I'm going to show you how I did the koala face from before. I'm just doing a basic stitch from top to bottom, in the area that I want to fill. In this case, it's a heart. It doesn't always have to start at the edge and going top to bottom. So for the koala, I started it in the center, and then I went outwards, but it's still the same idea. So here I see that there's sort of a gap between the two stitches, so I'm just going in back into the area and making sure that's all covered. The satin stitch just allows you to fully cover the space. I'm back to create the same stem that we did before with a back stitch. Now the basic stitch is the last stitch that we're going to learn. I don't know if it's actually called a basic stitch, but it is the most basic stitch where you just make a line each time. Yeah, there's no technique to it, honestly. Here you can see I'm making some sort of a flower shape using the basic stitch. Also, don't be afraid to make a mistake. You can always undo the stitch by just pulling everything out or cutting it from the back. So for this section, I'm going to replicate hydrangeas by stitching a bunch of French knots of varying sizes and different colors. I'm going to make it look really packed and full, so you'll see it comes together ultimately in the end. Yeah! Okay, now I'm just doing a bunch of basic stitches to imitate some general flower shapes and whatnot. Ooh, here's how it looks like. I'm so proud. I thought I could fill in some more space, and by this point my fingers are killing me. Honestly, I would suggest that you space this project out between a few days, but I don't know why, but I decided to speed run this, and I completed this in 2 days. So you can see later I have band-aids on my fingers because it was just so difficult pulling it up and out. Ooh, looks so good. Anyways, so yeah, I was just in the zone. So yeah, there are their band-aids. And honestly, I don't know what else to say. So this wraps up the video. If you got this far, thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment what your favorite stitch that you've learned in this video is, and subscribe to my channel. So yeah, see you in the next one. Bye bye.